Good morning, everyone, except for those of you who are watching this in the afternoon or in the evening, then I'd have to give you a different salutation. But we're recording this in the morning on Father's Day. I may or may not have been late, just like our discount code may or may not be iEdge, and the amount of money that it saves you is questionable. But we had an interesting LEC and LCS slate yesterday. CLG coming out with another victory. G2 got there. Um, yeah, interesting day overall. I'm joined as usual by Alan one and Alan two, the ghost and the hef. Um, do either of you have any thoughts about yesterday before we move on? I know Ghost has some feelings.
No, just no.
You don't have feelings, or no, you don't want to talk about your feelings.
I mean, you watch CLG do their shit yesterday. You literally only have to ban one or two of like the core components of that comp, and then it's just totally useless. You get rid of the Galio, they can't do what they want to do. If you get rid of the Vi, you can substitute that with like a Sejuani, I guess, but still the same concept really applies here. They're just trying to hit the R button and go. And then you pick a non-mobile AD carry. Good stuff.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. I thought it was pretty hilarious, and I said, there's no way that this Team Liquid Golden Guardians game is in any way fantasy relevant. And then it's like 20 fucking kills to Team Liquid. I have no idea what happened in the game because I took my own advice and did not watch. So sorry on that one. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. That's the danger of having opinions on the internet.
Indeed, I've been playing a lot of Vi. After I saw Broxa do it, I'm like, well, I used to be very good at Vi. Let's see how that works. And I've been running around in solo queue with that on like my Smurf. I'm playing Omnistone Vi though because I'm a hipster.
Ooh, that is hip.
It's pretty good. I like it. It's fun. The reason why Vi makes sense right now is because of Divine Sun being wrong. He boots of swiftness. I wasn't sure of lucidity, but they're both. But that it's a like charging, you're flashing, and then queuing somebody in the face. They're in League of Legends.
Yeah.
Let's move on to today's games on the LCS.
Sounds like a plan. You are cutting out a little bit here,
Yeah, so it's not just me.
Michael. Yeah.
Oh, I am.
Yeah. I think we got the gist of what you said, but
I said we only have a 5-game slate. Let's move on to, and I think that happened because I downloaded an Excel spreadsheet. But
perfect.
is it still doing it or no?
Yes, for a second there it did, but we'll find out as we get into this, I suppose.
All
Great.
right. We'll just move on to the first game of the slate. This is amazing. Happy Sunday, everybody. We have CLG versus Dignitas, 3-5 versus 3-5. Dignitas benched Dardoch for what we can only assume behind the scene issues. Acadian played League of Legends, I guess. CLG probably going to draft the same comp you've seen the last 2 days. The question is, Alan, will Dignitas be smart enough to draft around it, or is this just a CLG win?
I kind of forgot that Dardoch got benched right until you said that. I had been working on my thoughts for this morning, but I do think that like Acadian is a similar style player when we've seen him in the LCS. Like he's a very resource heavy jungler, ganking jungler, and so I think I'm gonna stick with my initial thought here, and that is that like the entire world is going to play CLG in this game. I have a feeling. They are coming off 2 wins. It's a team that people liked before the season anyway, and they played, the donkey composition that we've been talking about in 2 straight games, and I really hope that they just ban Galio because I think that is kind of the key here. Pobelter has always played Galio really well. it allows him to do a lot of the things that he's very good at. And so I'm hoping that Dignitas just bans Galio. And then I think that Dignitas is the favorite in this game. I haven't liked anything I've seen from CLG outside of this singular composition. And so I just believe that Dignitas is the better team when they're not getting cheesed. So I would want to play a lot of Dignitas in this here. If I were playing, an extreme amount of lineups, then sure I would want a CLG hedge or two. But to even like match the field on CLG, I think you got to play him like 20%, which is not a thing that I am interested in doing at all. So I would look to play quite a bit of Dignitas and maybe hedge with a little bit of CLG, but not much.
All right, Michael, we'll pass it on to you. What are your thoughts here on Dignitas versus CLG?
Sure. So it is against the rules for me to play Dignitas at this point because they benched Dardoch and they must pay the consequences for benching Dardoch. I don't know why he freaked out at his team, but I am positive that he was justified in freaking out at his team. The only reason why Dignitas was good last split was because Dardoch played out of his mind for the most part and put the rest of his team into spots where they can succeed. I know that Neo had some like really huge kill performances, but without somebody like Dardoch completely manhandling the other jungler for most of the early game and mid game, it's just like so much more difficult to do that. So I think purely based off of that, I know it's not really the most logical take, but I just can't play Dignitas in that situation. I just fundamentally don't believe in the decisions that they make. I think going from Soligo to Yasui, nobody really talked about that. I don't know what caused that either. I know that they said it wasn't like a benching of Soligo. It was trying to give Yasui some stage time because they felt like he deserved it from how he played in Academy. But if I'm somebody like Dardoch and I'm trying to win right now and I didn't like that move, I could see why everything else became so much more contentious. In terms of just like DraftKings and stuff like that, Broxa and Pobelter were both around 14%. Wild Turtle was at 20%, Finn was at 20% because they make a lot of sense as secondary stack pieces. Like if you do a typical 4-2 with an 80 carry captain, then you would bring Wild Turtle and Finn back on the other side, or you would do Wild Turtle plus Smoothie. So that was Smoothie at 16%, and then you have Broxa and Pobelter that were a lot lower at 14.74%. CLG's team slot was at 10%, which was probably caused because like people were doing primary stacks with CLG secondary stacks and then a one-off in the team slot or something like that. You would expect the ownership percentages to be a little closer. For Dignitas, I think they were significantly lower because nobody wanted to play them without Dardoch. Let's see. Was Acadian even drafted?
Acadian wasn't Acadian wasn't in the
Oh,
pool.
he wasn't available.
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody still drafted Dardoch. That didn't work out for him. Fake God was at 6%. Yasui was at 5%. And then Neo and Aframu were a little bit higher at 12 and 9%. So I think that you're right. A lot of people are going to have a difficult time playing Dignitas. I think they make a lot of sense for a DraftKings play. But like I said, I will not be playing them because I am willing to bet with my heart and say fuck Dignitas for benching Dardoch. In regards to the ease of banning out CLG, I don't think it's easy for that to happen. Vi is not only very good with Galio, but she's also very good with like Shen. Like if they want to pull out some kind of Shen composition, they could do that. If they want to play Orianna, you can get an Orianna ball composition with Vi, which would be out of control. There's just a lot of good options. And Vi is funny because she brings a lot of damage and survivability with her shields and the Divine Sunderer buffs, but she's also a great target for enchanting. So you could even see her with a Karma. You could see her with a Lulu, something like that. There's a lot of follow-up engage that you can throw on top of her that just makes her even more obnoxious to play against. So you would really have to ban Vi and Galio.
To be honest, I don't even think that it's like that. Vi is great, or that like it makes Broxo better or whatever. It just makes it so that like it's very simple for Finn and Wild Turtle to know their roles, and so they're not just like dying in side lanes the entire time. So like the team's just grouped up constantly because that's the entirety of the composition. So then like Wild Turtle's like, hell yeah, I know how to play backline Tristana.
Well, yeah, and it also gives Wild Turtle the forward mobility too, because on the Callista you are kind of more of like a scrappy AD carry where you want to get into the fight, and the same thing with Tristana, you have the option to jump forward.
True.
So both of those also make a lot of sense with Shen. So I would be pretty surprised if we didn't see Shen at some point. I'm not sure how strong he is, but I'm pretty sure he can use Divine Sunder as well. Not sure how the matchups go, but I do like CLG a lot right here. It's not that and like I said, it's not that I think Dignitas is completely incapable of winning without Dardoch. It's just I will not play them because that's the kind of guy that I am. I understand from an ownership perspective, it makes a lot of sense to play Dignitas because, like Alan said, everyone wants CLG to play better.
Well, Michael is a man of his principles and will not draft Dignitas till Dardoch has been freed. I like it. We're moving on to our second game of the day. Team Liquid 5-3 versus 100 Thieves 6-2. Two top teams going at it. Michael, what are you doing with this one?
Okay, so yesterday, 100 Thieves beat FlyQuest. The day before that, they had an upset against CLG and that easy composition. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say about CLG was that they remind me of what World Elite was doing when they had Teacher Ma in the mid lane, because it was just so simple to play around, and it does make the game much easier to play. But with 100 Thieves and Team Liquid, I think that 100 Thieves. I think people want 100 Thieves to be better than Team Liquid. And I personally think they kind of are. Um I don't love Team Liquid's champion pool, like the champions that they're playing. They played Camille, which is a good champion, obviously, Lucian, Varus, Rumble, Nautilus, and then in the game before that they played Gangplank, Rumble, Rise, Varus, Nautilus. So they have a lot of champions that they're kind of having overlap with. I think that if 100 Thieves drafts correctly and picks like one or two tankier champions outside of the support role, I think you can get into a pretty good spot where Team Liquid will not have like enough physical damage, because it seems like they always want to go AP jungler 80 everywhere else and then just try to make it work. So I could see them getting outscaled. I think that Abadage brings an interesting ripple into the draft because we haven't really seen him on these more aggressive champions as often, but he is somebody that plays Rise. He pulled that out in the last game. So I guess it comes down to who do you think wins the early game? I think that 100 Thieves wins the early game. I think for Team Liquid, the best case scenario for the early game would be going even and trying to slow the game down. So 100 Thieves is going to be the aggressor. That gives them a tempo advantage, in my opinion, assuming the draft doesn't get completely away from them. So I think I just like 100 Thieves outright to win the match. I think that's probably where I'd go.
All right, moving on to you, Alan, on this one. Team Liquid versus 100 Thieves. What do you got?
Yeah, this was the one I struggled with quite a bit, and I think I would end up just kind of filling in my lineups with both sides of this matchup. I agree. I think that 100 Thieves wins this game. Like I really can't shake that feeling, and I made a bet on it, and I think that like Team Liquid has looked better than they are in the last two games, mostly because Core JJ's played Nautilus and just kind of taken over. And that is the thing he can do on that engaged style champion, especially with Hex Flashback in the game. But I think 100 Thieves is a little too good to fall for that as often as the other two teams they played this weekend did. So, but I do think that Team Liquid is the better DraftKings side, probably. Like, 100 Thieves is probably going to be the higher owned team here. Because they feel like the higher DraftKings upside team, but I think Team Liquid could easily get a lot of kills and a win too, because I expect this game to be pretty back and forth. But like I said, I still can't shake the feeling that 100 Thieves is going to win. So I would probably just play both sides in this one, because I think that there's a lot of other games on this slate that are coin flips that people think are heavily favored to one team. Like we just talked about with CLG Dignitas, I think that that's like a pretty 50-50 matchup, but people are not going to play it that way at all. People are going to play CLG as if they're a heavy favorite here. I don't think that's the case with 100 Thieves Team Liquid. Like the ownership will be spread pretty evenly between the two teams would be my guess. Like they end up in the 12%-ish range. 100 Thieves probably a little bit higher.
All right. You guys are not swayed from 100 Thieves' performance yesterday against
100 Thieves against
yeah.
the FlyQuest game. Yeah, it wasn't great. I think that they're also like trying out a lot of things right now. They've had more unique champions than a lot of teams so far. So I'm not too worried about that. I think 100 Thieves was looking at the Team Liquid game this week.
All right. We'll move on to our third game of the day. It's a banger. We got TSM versus C9. I am thinking that people won't be going to C9 here. They haven't been really showing anything great. We saw perks on Renekton again mid. Did not work out that great. There were like questionable engages from Blabber on the Diana. So I'm guessing, Alan, is this a bounce back spot for C9, or will TSM take this one?
I think it's interesting that you say that. I kind of go the other way. I think that C9 is like very sticky on DraftKings. I think that they've just won people way too much money and way too many slates for them to like go away from them in any serious way. I also think that TSM, for whatever reason, just never has as much ownership on DraftKings as I expect. Yesterday was, they had quite a bit, but I think that TSM wins this game too. I have that feeling as well from the 100 Thieves game. I have it for this one too. I'm not really sure what's up with Cloud9 right now. I think that they're kind of like finding their footing in the meta. I think that they will be fine eventually, but I kind of believe TSM wins this one, and I do think that like TSM is going to be significantly less owned than Cloud9 here would be my guess. And it's kind of like the CLG Dig game to me, where it's like pretty close to 50-50 in my opinion. And I think that the field's opinion is going to be pretty heavily favored towards Cloud9. Now, I could be wrong about that. You could be right that like people have seen Cloud9 losing enough that they're like, I'm getting off of them, but I have my doubts about that happening. So for me, I think I would play, 20% TSM here, and then probably hedge a little bit with Cloud9 too, because obviously Cloud9 is always a live team in DraftKings. So I would want more TSM, but probably a little bit of Cloud9 too.
All right, that's interesting. I figured the field would probably think that they saw their games against EG and Immortals and be off Cloud9 today, but Michael, we'll get your thoughts on this one. TSM versus Cloud9. What do you got for us?
So it's always Cloud9 for me. I think that I'm just gonna take a look at their last two drafts. Playing Volibear. Yes, Volibear is a flex pick, but Volibear is just really not that good in like this mid-game skirmish kind of spot, because he's not tanky enough to survive the way that he needs to. And I think that Divine Sunderer, while it does work on him, it's not really like the perfect kind of item for him. So I think people are kind of trying to shoehorn him into these drafts, but I think that worldwide we've seen Volibear be pretty underwhelming. I think that in both of their recent matches, they lost to Nocturne. I don't think that Nocturne is some kind of like champion that just destroys them, because that'd be kind of stupid. But they're drafts are kind of bizarre. We've seen them play Renekton multiple times and be very bad with it. So that's another spot similar to Volibear where they're trying to get what they think is some kind of power pick or like easy meta pick to fit into a draft and have flexibility. But that flexibility is allowing the other team to counter pick in multiple spots. So if you first pick Renekton overall, for example, you can automatically counter him top lane, forcing him to go mid lane. And then once you know that it's going mid lane, then you just pick a champion that's good against Renekton in mid lane, and then you have two advantageous lane matchups. So I think that's one of the issues that I have personally with the Renekton drafts, even though there are a lot of players who are, or a lot of teams who place a high value on Renekton. I think that's one of the issues they're running into. Same thing kind of with Lee Sin. Yes, the flexibility is nice, but if it causes you to draft two losing lanes, then it's not nice. So against a team like TSM, TSM has blue side, so that's another advantage for. In general, it's an advantage to be on blue side. I think for a team like Cloud9, they're probably better off being on red side because it's a little easier to hide your. It is just easier to hide your flex pick. So if you're TSM, you might first pick something like Rumble, which is a good flex pick. You might first pick Nocturne, which is a pretty good flex pick, which will give C9 the option to kind of start countering things and pick the other powerful champions that are left open. So I could see it happen very easily where, like, even though theoretically blue side should be stronger, teams that have a tendency to kind of mess up their blue side drafts are just better off being on red side because they're not having their champions pushed around into different lanes. So that, I know it's maybe that just fits too easily into my idea that I think C9 is better, so maybe I'm biased here, but C9 isn't a team that necessarily needs to play the best meta champions to get into a good spot against a team like TSM. Whenever TSM plays against these higher rated teams, I always get the feeling that it's going to be a lower kill score game, just because they just generally do that. That's just kind of how TSM approaches the game, and they want to get into a couple of big team fights later on, which is going to give Cloud9 the tempo advantage in the early and mid game, assuming that they draft accordingly. And that's just another reason why I would like C9. Now, C9 has been overly aggressive at points and has thrown away leads and used their tempo to hurt themselves many times, but it's just the better side to be on. I think I guess it's somewhat similar to like being the attacking player in like a chess match. Like, yes, you have the better winning chances, but you make one or two bad moves and then you're kind of screwed and you're just going to lose horribly. So I think that's really where I want to be, is with C9. I know that they've been losing recently and have been kind of not looking great, but it's the same mentality I have when G2 looks bad. You just have to stay on them. From an ownership perspective, I think this will probably be a spot where C9 is low teens, middle teens, which is the lowest we'll probably see them for a long time, and that's when you want to get in on them. So for me, it's Cloud9, and that's it.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, the side selection thing has been kind of interesting for week 3. If you look on Leaguepedia, all the teams that picked blue almost outside of CLG and Heart of Thieves, they selected red side, but red side's been winning every game except for one.
9 out of the last 10 games. Wow, that's crazy in the LCS.
But we'll move. Oh, go ahead.
So just the last thing I'd say about drafts is that the problem. It's funny in a region like the LPL or the LCK. I feel like the Blues. I don't have the results to back up what I'm about to say, but I think that when you're in a better region that understands the game better and helps form the meta, the reasons they have for picking champions are fundamentally different from the reasons why LCS teams pick those champions. LCS teams see what the good teams are doing, and then they try to dogmatically follow it without truly understanding why what they're playing is strong. That's part of the beauty of what CLG is doing. CLG isn't saying that champion, and that champion are meta. I need to figure out ways to play them and just blind pick them. And maybe I don't understand the win conditions, but they're very strong champions, so I should be carving out an edge for myself. Instead, they're saying, I don't care what everyone else is doing. I think that this combination of champions is very strong. It allows me to play this way, where it's very simple around these big objectives, similar to what Team World Elite has done in the past. And I'm going to sound like such a douche. the fructifying power behind that team composition is whether or not it matches up with the meta So like a team composition like a wombo combo team composition like Vi Galio, if it matches up well with the like Rumble set kind of stuff that we've seen, or Rumble Viego, just those kinds of champions. Those, if that matchup is good enough, then it's a viable team composition. If this was some other kind of meta, like yes, Vi always existed, Galio always existed, but if it just didn't match up well for one reason or another in the meta, then it would have been a big problem. Like for example, we can't see Vi in games against Udyr. Like I think that she would just get run over because she doesn't do enough damage in the early game, and he just like overwhelms her. So it's interesting matchups and stuff like that, which really will determine whether or not CLG can be long-term viable with this type of strategy.
All right. Moving on to our fourth game on Sunday slate, we have the Immortals at 4-4 this summer versus FlyQuest 3-5. I did not watch these guys' games yesterday, so give me a second. Oh yeah, Immortals beat C9. I was sad, and then FlyQuest lost to 100 Thieves. We'll start with you, Alan, on this one. What's your take on it?
I mean, I think that I feel a little similarly to the DOS game as Michael does. Like, I feel like I have some heart commitment to FlyQuest at this point. I really thought that they would be better than they are. I don't think that they are very good, it turns out. They just seem to be behind in gold always. Even if, they have a couple kills up against teams that are better than them, they almost always seem to be behind in gold, which usually means that team is pretty bad. And Immortals is not like that. Like, Immortals does pretty well in laning phases, in early games, and then, kind of it falls apart against good teams at the end, it feels like a lot of the time. So I think that Immortals is probably deservingly a pretty big favorite in this game. I think they're like minus 190. I was looking this morning. I, from a DraftKings perspective, think I would want to get a piece of both of these teams. I don't think that either of them ends up super highly owned. Immortals maybe, but because Evil Geniuses is playing Golden Guardians, I think people will probably look at that game as their favorite team, and that Immortals probably comes in around like the 10% range. In that case, I think I would want 20% of Immortals and then like 5% of FlyQuest or something like that, because although FlyQuest is behind in gold a lot, they do seem to get early kills because Jose Dioto is getting into lanes or whatever it happens to be, which I think tends towards higher kill total type of games, and then it means that FlyQuest always kind of feels like they can fight at certain spots, and so there just seems to be a lot of team fights in FlyQuest games, which is great for DraftKings scoring. So I think that the winner of this game has a pretty good chance to be a decently high scoring team, and so I would want more of the field than for Immortals, and then probably match the field with FlyQuest, because I'm sure that people mix in dogs no matter what. They always end up around like 5%, so I would probably try to match that with FlyQuest.
All right, Michael, let's get your thoughts on Immortals versus FlyQuest. What are you doing with this matchup?
Sure. So the first thing I wanted to take a look at was how FlyQuest has done so far this split, and they're 3-5, and that's not like incredibly bad, but they beat CLG, so that was when CLG was playing like garbage, so I don't know if you can really put much weight into that. They beat Evil Geniuses. Evil Geniuses is always kind of in a spot where they can just throw away a game, which I think they did throw away that game. Then they beat TSM, and TSM again is another team where they can lose early games hard enough to just completely lose the game. The reason why I wanted to bring that up is because I think that what I was talking about a lot last split, and even before that, when like there were the rumors about Jose Dioto coming over into the LCS, there's a fundamental difference between the Graves meta and the type of jungle meta we have right now. Yes, junglers still get a ton of kills right now, but it's just so different. Like when he could play Graves and be the most powerful champion in a game, yeah, he looked good because every jungler looked good when they played Graves and won a game. But now you see him on champions like Sejuani, bad champion for him. Volibear, probably just a bad champion to play in the jungle right now overall in pro play. Because like you can't snowball hard enough in solo queue. You can snowball hard enough on Volibear. I just don't like it right now in pro play. Viego, Xin Zhao, Lee Sin. Like I like the Xin idea. I think that Xin could work really well for a player like Jose Dioto if you want them to be the primary carry for your team. I know that he does play Lee Sin, and they have 4 Lee Sin games, but only one with Lee Sin jungle. So I think that's really where Jose Dioto is going to have to kind of turn things around is by playing champions that actually allow him to impact the game like he did when he was thought of as a better jungler. Um, it's just so much more difficult. There's less resources in the jungler, and we kind of saw that this was coming. So then you take someone like him and take someone like Xerxes. Once they brought the resources down, Xerxes looked like a much better player because it's more impactful being able to get into these lanes and like create plays. So even though he's playing things like Imperial Mandate Gragas, he has a gigantic impact on the early game and mid game, and we knew that Xerxes had this kind of potential because he's played in metas like this in the past. I think that Immortals is in a very good spot right here, just win the game outright. I know that FlyQuest is a team that we want to play against and we want to play in general. I think that right here is a spot where I only want to play Immortals. I don't want to play FlyQuest, and I almost don't even want to play Immortals because now that they have something like Ziggs as an option, that could severely lower the kill upside in a game. The reason why that could happen is because if they're losing, they can turtle by just wave clearing the entire game. And if they're winning, it's very easy for them to get like an absurd positional advantage just by taking a couple of extra towers and then forcing FlyQuest to walk into them at the Dragon Pit and stuff like that, getting poked down, and then you can't even contest the objective. So it's going to be very difficult for FlyQuest, I think, to get a good draft here, and it's also going to be difficult for them to play out the game unless they steamroll the early game. So I think that I would. The only decision I'm really trying to make is would I play Immortals at all? Like, am I that afraid of their upside? And right now I'm kind of leaning towards not playing them. Like, I wouldn't use them in any of the qualifier stuff, for example.
All right, Alan, moving on to you. Immortals versus FlyQuest.
I already went on Immortals
Oh.
versus FlyQuest. But
I have my notes wrong.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on the matchup? That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think that the Ziggs thing was something that I wasn't thinking about before, but I do agree that like that can really really limit a team's upside in DraftKings. I still think that you want to play Immortals here if you're going to play Immortals at all the rest of the season because FlyQuest is just that kind of team.
Yeah, better as a secondary stack. Definitely a valid secondary stack. I just don't know if I'd use them as a primary stack.
I agree with that.
All right, moving on to our fifth and final game for Sunday. We have Evil Geniuses 3-5 versus Golden Guardians, also 3-5. Two bottom of the barrel teams record-wise. Talent-wise, I don't think as much. We'll start with you, Alan, on this one. Evil Geniuses versus Golden Guardians. Am I really going to have to throw some Golden Guardians lineups in today?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that so the line for this game is plus 200 to Golden Guardians, which is right around that's 33% chance winning, right? I feel like Evil Geniuses throws away 40% of games. Like it doesn't matter the team. I don't care. I'm in on any Evil Geniuses opponent, especially when it's like an opponent that no one is ever going to want to play in Golden Guardians. So yes, I think that it's a very good idea to play some Golden Guardians lineups. You probably you probably only have to play like 10% of them to get over the field on it, and just play them in primary stacks only if you want to, because like if they win, they're probably the primary stack that wins because Evil Geniuses, we know the way that they lose games is they just throw it away by losing to themselves, and that means that they're dying a lot unnecessarily, and then eventually they die too many times unnecessarily, and then they lose a team fight and the game's over. So that's a really good game script for winning. So I do think that like Golden Guardians in some primary stack positions is good. Golden Guardians yesterday gave up 20 something deaths to Team Liquid, a team that usually wins like 12-2. So I can see an argument definitely for playing Evil Geniuses too. They are the much more talented team. They've been better in the past, way better in the past. I think this meta so far, as the teams are sort of like feeling themselves out, I think a lot of what Michael is talking about is true. Like, some of these teams just get trapped by being in the blue side instead of like picking the best champion for them or setting the best strategy for them. They're just like, we have to pick this champion in this spot, and then they don't know what they're doing with the champion. So that could be something that happens to Evil Geniuses. That's part of why there's a lot of upsets right now too, I think. So so I think, yes, you should play, 10% Golden Guardians, and then however much Evil Geniuses you're comfortable with. But I think because they're the most expensive team on the slate, I'm wondering if that actually depresses some ownership for them. At first, when I looked at this slate, I was like, oh, Evil Geniuses is going to be the highest owned pretty easily. But I'm not sure that ends up being the case, because I think that people probably look at the loose pricing in TSM, Cloud9, and Team Liquid 100 Thieves. Like, you can play 80 carry captain with any combination of those four teams. So it feels like that is where a lot of ownership ends up going. And so this probably ends up a pretty highly owned game for me. So I think that the strategy that I'm looking at right now is like, we've been talking this week about how if you like an underdog or you like a play that you think is going to be low owned, then you end up with a lot of it because you're trying to mix it with as much combinations as you can. For me, I think on this slate that ends up being Dignitas. And so I'm looking at Dignitas with basically everyone on this slate, because I think there's a lot of games that could go either way. And when you have something that you feel like is going to be low owned but has really a good chance of winning, like I do with Dignitas, just mixing it up with basically everything is a way to say, if this hits, then I could be in first place. It's the way to also, if Dignitas lose all your money on the day. But for me, GPP play is always about chasing first. Like, I don't, I'm not too worried about like where how many min caches I have or whatever. And I think that strategy is how I'm chasing first today, is Dignitas mixed with basically everyone.
If you ain't first, you're last.
That's right.
Everyone knows that.
Ricky Bob.
I have heard that before. Michael, we'll throw it over to you. Close us out here. Evil Geniuses versus Golden Guardians. What are you doing with this game?
Yeah, so I would only play Evil Geniuses here. I'm not going to chase Golden Guardians wins. I think that they will be very popular because I could see them being at least 30%, and it's partially for what Alan was saying. CLG is the less expensive team, even though I think they're listed as a favorite right now on Sportsbook. So like Dignitas is the more expensive team, right?
Is that right in the salaries?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So EG plus CLG will be popular. EG plus 100 Thieves will be popular. EG plus TSM probably less popular, but people will still play it. EG plus FlyQuest, I think some people will play that. When you were talking about Dignitas, the fact that they are listed as a dog on the sportsbook but have the higher price on DraftKings, that does make it a better play for me. I think that will depress the ownership. So if you compare Dignitas with some of these favorites, the other favorites, that's where you're going to get some very good lineups. Like you might get a 80 carry or mid lane captain pairing that you wouldn't expect to be able to get with two favorites, but I think you probably can do it with Dignitas today, especially if you pair them with Team Liquid. I think Team Liquid.
Yeah.
So go through some of those rotations, and I think that you'll be surprised at some of the ones that fit together. You might need to go to a mid captain or something like that, which isn't going to feel good with Yasui, but could Yasui win someone a GPP? I think yes.
Yeah.
More likely that it's Neo, but just if you're thinking to yourself, big game dig against CLG, explosive matchup, maybe they get a ton of kills. That's also a game stack spot, I guess, with that line of thinking. Just from a game stack perspective, the three that I would consider game stacking are, I mean, I would game stack every single one of these games except for Immortals FlyQuest, which means that that's probably the one that's going to be a good game stack. So.
Yeah. So the salary is like different than I've basically ever seen it. Like you can play 80 carry captain, 100 thieves with Cloud9. So like that's gonna be a very popular construction. You could play 80 carry captain Team Liquid with Cloud9, I'm pretty sure. Yes, you can. So like there's a lot available here. And so that's what makes me like the Dignitas play even more, because like that stuff is going to be really easy for people to click on, and I don't think it's like necessarily has a higher winning chance than some of the other games, like even the Immortals FlyQuest, CLG Dig. So I think it's a slate where like you can do a lot of things, so you're gonna have to pick something that you're kind of all in on. Not you don't have to like 100% of your lineups or whatever, but I think that you have to take a stand on something because it's so wide open salary wise.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sounds good. Any closing thoughts on the slate for you guys? Any bets you want to put out there?
I really think that I really think that Golden Guardians is gonna beat Evil Geniuses today. That just would be the most EG thing of all time.
I don't really have any spots that I love.
They have a win against Cloud9 this week, right? Evil Geniuses does.
They beat Cloud9, lost to CLG,
Oh,
and will they lose to the Golden Guardians?
That's happening. Everyone's gonna have Cloud9 100 Thieves, and the winning stack's gonna be Dignitas Golden Guardians.
All right, everyone, you know the deal. Want to thank everyone for coming here and watching today. Hopefully you enjoyed the early morning version of the show. If you did enjoy it, be sure to like and subscribe to the Esports Department YouTube channel. Want to thank Michael and Alan for joining me this morning. You can find Michael at League of Items on Twitter and Alan at LCS Picks on Twitter. You can find me at XGhostWriter90. Don't forget, you can get 10% off a subscription by using the code IEDGE. Gain access to all the projections for League of Legends, CSGO, and all the video breakdowns we have to offer. Good luck on this Sunday, and let's go make some money.